Welcome to Linux and Shell scripting, and let's just jump right into the meat of the matter. So first of all, Linux is an operating system. And when we talk about an operating system, we're talking about a set of operations that allows the computer to manage its resources, and also that provides a sort of interface so that users can get things done. So that's what an operating system is. Now, a key component of the operating system is something that is known as the kernel. And the kernel is going to be that section of the operating system or those set of instructions which provides the basic functionality for managing the resources of the computer. And when we talk about resources, we're talking about things like the memory, like the devices which are attached, like the CPU, and so on. In terms of understanding Linux properly, we need to have a basic understanding of the file system hierarchy. And if you look at the diagram that is provided here, you realize that right at the top, there is this forward slash, and the forward slash represents the root. And that is the start of the file system hierarchy, the beginning. So everything begins at root. So root is a folder or a directory. And inside of that directory, you will have other directories. So if we look right below root, we are seeing in blue the set of directories which you typically find under the root, such as bin, etc, home, lib, sbin. And I'm just naming a few of the common ones that we'll come across. Now, the home is going to be a very important one because under home, we will have the user profiles which are set up for the system. And when we have a look at creating users, that will become more evident. Another thing to bear in mind is the difference between the absolute path and the relative path. Now, whenever we talk about a path, we are referring to the set of instructions that tell us how to locate files within the file system. So the absolute path means that we start talking about the file from the root. For example, inside the root, we will go to home. Inside home, we would probably go to another folder called Bob. And in that Bob folder, then we might locate a file. So that is how we specify the absolute path. We start referencing the file from the root. There's another way in which we can reference file, however, known as the relative path. And this is where we talk about the file based on the current location. In other words, based on where we are, how can we navigate to the file that we want to navigate to? And we will do a few demonstrations in a moment that will kind of illustrate the difference between absolute path and relative path. Now, we will be using something known as the command line interface. And this is going to be a text-based interface where we're able to type in commands. And on this section, you will see some of the basic commands that we are going to be looking at as we move through this first session of the series. At this point, I'm just going to do some demonstrations. So I am going to load up VirtualBox. And inside a VirtualBox, I will have my Linux that has been installed. So I'm going to start it. And you can see over here that the VM is initializing. So we are powering up the virtual machine. I'm going to enter my user credentials. All right, good. So the first command that we were looking at was the uname command. So uname, we press enter. And what this does is it tells us the details about the operating system. So the operating system that we currently have installed here is Linux. There's another command that allows us to clear the screen because over time the screen will become cluttered. So we can use the clear command to do that. And then the other command that is of great importance to us is the ls command that allows us to list the content of directories. So ls, enter, and we are seeing the content of the directory. Now, usually the type of colors that we see will indicate the kind of directories that we are looking at. And on this installation, the blue represents the directories or the folders, and the white represents text files. Let us now look at another command quickly. And that command is going to be pwd. And what pwd does is it tells us the directory that we are currently in. So we are currently in the home directory. And note that the home directory flows from the root. So that's the absolute path. We're starting from the root. And from the root, we go to home. And from home, we go to the Kalimi. We go to the Kalimi folder. Now, the Kalimi folder is going to be the user that is currently logged on. So if I do who am I and enter, you realize that it tells me the current user. And the current user is Kalimi. And therefore, there was a folder that was created or a directory that was created called Kalimi in the home directory. And that is where the details, the files for this current user is going to be stored. Once again, let's do a clear. And I'm now going to use the list command again, but this time I'm going to use it with an option. So ls-l. And what this does is it displays the same information within the directory, but in a long format. And the long format allows us to get some additional details. So for example, if you look right here for the CNS4004 directory, we realize that there is a D at the beginning, and the D at the beginning indicates that the file that we're looking at is a directory. And there is a set of file permissions following it, RWX, that means read, write, and execute. And there are three groups. So we have the owner of the file. So they will have permissions. We also have the group. Those will also have permissions. And then we have other, meaning any other person who is not the owner. And those will also have permissions. So each category, whether it is owner, whether it is the owner, the group, or other, will come with its own combination of RXX. Now, we can also turn off permissions. So for example, if we look at the last section here that represents other, we have read access and we have execute access, but there's no write access for other. So no other person apart from the owner can create stuff inside of the CNS 4004 folder. Another thing to bear in mind is that different versions of the shell, and the shell is going to be that interface that interprets the commands that we are given to the command line interface. So different shell will have different customization that will sometimes show you where you are in the file system hierarchy. And currently, whenever you see this, currently this accent, then that means that we are currently in the home directory. And we can move between directories by making use of the cd command. So just going again, pwd tells us that we are at home, and inside home we are in Kalimi. So I can use cd and I can use 2 dots, and that will take me to the parent. Meaning, I'm currently in Kalimi, but the parent of Kalimi is home. So if I hit enter, notice that it changes. It changes from the tilde that tells me that I am inside my home directory to telling me that I'm now inside just the /home directory. So I'm not inside the Kalimi directory anymore, because the Kalimi directory would actually be my home directory. And if we do pwd, then you realize that it's saying that I'm in the home directory from the root. Once again, let's clear. And the question now is, if I want to go back to my home directory, to the Kalimi home directory, what do I do? Well, I can do cd, and I can do the accent or the curly. And when I hit enter, notice it takes me back into the home directory, where I'm just going to type pwd just to confirm. There we are back in the home directory. So let's go back to the parent again, cd ... And this time, from the home directory, just type cd and nothing else. And that also takes you back into the home directory. And pwd just to confirm, I'm back in the Kalimi directory. Now remember, we had also seen about the root. And if I want to go straight to the root, then I can do cd followed by the /. And notice it changes to indicate that I'm now at the root. So if we now do an ls, then remember when we had looked at that graphic, we saw things like bin, we saw things like sbin, we saw things like Etsy, and we also saw home. Now remember, inside of home is where we are going to find those folders for the different users. And those folders, as we mentioned before, would represent the user's home directory. Once again, we are going to clear. And I'm going to now go back to the home directory. So cd takes me back into the home directory. Do a ls again, and we are seeing that these are all the files which are present within this home directory. Now, another command that becomes important is, how do we create directories? So we create directories by making use of the mkdir command, followed by the name of the directory that we want to create. And in this case, let's create a folder called Scarlett. Hit enter. There's no errors. So if we do a ls again, and we look, we should see a Scarlett directory. Notice it's also in blue. That indicates it's a directory. And if we do the ls in the long format, and we look for the Scarlett folder or file, we will see that it says D, which means that it is indeed a directory. So clear again, we now want to go into the Scarlett directory. So we are currently inside our home directory. And inside this home directory, we had created a Scarlett directory. So we can cd and we go into Scarlett. Also, please bear in mind that this thing is case sensitive. So when I type Scarlett, it has to be with a big S. I'm going to hit enter. And now note, I am now inside the Scarlett directory, and I get access to it by going through the home directory. So it means that I'm currently in /home/Calimi/Scarlett. And we are going to use pwd to confirm that. And there you go. Now, a command that is important for us so that we can easily create files is a command called touch. So it's touch followed by the file name. Let's call it Scarlett. Well, let's call it apple.txt. And let's create another one, touch, and let's call it pine.txt. So inside the Scarlett directory, we now have two files, one called apple.txt and one called pine.txt. So let us clear, and then let us do a ls, and there you find the two files, apple.txt, pine.txt. Let's look at what happens though if I do a long listing. So ls-l, and you realize that there are several additional pieces of information that we are seeing. So we are seeing the name of the file. We are seeing the date and time at which it has been created. And we are also seeing the owner who created the file. And we are seeing the group that the file is associated with. And this 0 here is telling us the number of bytes inside of the file. So because we did not put in any data into the file, it means that the file currently has 0 bytes. And once again on this side, we find the permissions. Note we're not seeing the D at the beginning, and the absence of the D or the dash indicates that the D is not present. So we are now looking at a normal file and not a directory. In terms of the permissions for the owner, we have read and write access, but we do not have executable access. For the group, we only have read access. And for every other person who is not the owner, we also have only read access. Now we can use the -a command in conjunction with the L command so that we can see all the hidden files. And when we have a look here, in addition to apple.txt and pine.txt, we're also seeing two additional options. We're seeing something that says a dot, and we're seeing something that says ... Notice that these are two directories, as you notice by the D. So the single dot means the current directory, and the two dot means the parent directory. So we are in Scarlett. Remember, just doing pwd shows that Scarlett is inside Calimi, and Calimi is inside home. So therefore, if I do cd ... meaning go to the parent, remember two dot means parent, then it will take me from Scarlett back to Calimi. So we are trying that, pwd. Notice I'm now outside of Scarlett, I'm back in Calimi. So I'm clearing, I want to go back into the Scarlett folder. So cd Scarlett ls-al once more. And the single dot, as we had mentioned before, means we are in the current directory. So for example, if I say ls and I put a dot, then it means list all the content of the current directory. And notice we end up back with apple.txt and pine.txt because we're listing everything in the current directory. Current directory is Scarlett, but we do not want to see the hidden files. So ls followed by the dot mean list everything in the current directory. And it's a similar thing if we just type ls. So by default, it knows it must look inside the current directory.